Welcome to Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda. My name's Nick Park and I'm taking us through a series of messages called The Great Prayers of the Old Testament. And we're looking through the Old Testament at great men and women of God and how they prayed. And we're seeing how God had people on a journey of prayer, that as we travel from Genesis through to the coming of Jesus, we see God's people learning more and more how to pray. Really what the disciples said to Jesus, teach us how to pray. Well, God was teaching his people to pray throughout the Old Testament. And our prayer is that you, as you go through these studies with us, will also grow deeper in your prayer life, and your prayer life will increase and become more joyous and more effective. And we were talking in our last couple of lessons, we were talking about Samuel. And Samuel, of course, the great prophet before the period of the kings. And whenever Samuel was a little boy in the temple, we have that incident where anyone that ever went to Sunday school as a child knows about it. Where Samuel was in the temple, and he heard a voice calling him. And Samuel, he went running to Eli, the high priest, and said, you called me? And he said, no. And this happened a couple of times. And then he said, look, next time it happens, say, speak, Lord, for your servant's hearing. Your servant is listening. Or in the old King James Version, speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. And whenever Samuel responded in that way, then God gave a prophecy actually, which was quite a serious one for Eli and his family. But this story, so familiar to us, basically sums up the difference between Christian prayer and prayer in all other religions and traditions. Because in most religions, prayer is all about man reaching out to God. Whereas in the Bible, prayer is God reaching out to man. It's the Lord who initiated this time of prayer with Samuel. All Samuel said was, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And then God did the talking. But God called him. God called Samuel several times before he answered and said he was ready to listen. Prayer is an opportunity for us to listen to God's voice. God calls us aside. God calls us out of our busyness. Our business and busyness, spelt with an I and spelt with a Y. God calls us away from that and says, I want to talk to you. God calls us sometimes, like with Samuel, out of our sleep. There's times I've woken up in the small hours of the morning and I know God is calling me to prayer. God calls us out of our concerns and our pressures, and sometimes even God calls us out of our busyness with Christian things, with Christian ministry and stuff we're doing in the church. And in the midst of doing all this stuff for God, God calls us aside and says, I want to spend time with you. I want you to come to me in prayer, and I want you to listen to me because I have stuff to impart to you and stuff I want to say to you and stuff I want to share with you. And I would encourage you today, be sensitive to that voice. When you hear God calling you and prompting you to come aside in prayer, don't tell him you're too busy. Don't suppress that impulse, but respond and say, like Samuel, say, speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. I have discovered that time spent in prayer is never time wasted. In fact, I look back through my life and I see the time spent in prayer has probably been the most productive time I've ever spent at anything in my entire life. And I pray you will discover that also as the Lord calls out to you to meet with him in prayer, that you will pray that very simple prayer of Samuel's. So simple, a child could pray it, but so effective. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. May God bless you today, and I'd invite you to join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.